Well, hello everyone and welcome back to Vickie's Country Home. Today I'm going to do a little bit of an experiment. About a week or so ago I made blueberry fruit starter, which is water, sugar, and fermented blueberries. So I'm going to use some of my sourdough starter that I made from scratch. And I'm going to use some of this in combination. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but we're going to make sourdough bagels. Alright, we're going to start out with the sourdough starter. And I fed this last night and again this morning, and it is really nice and bubbly. So you want a really active sourdough starter. And I'm going to use 1 3/4 cup of the starter. Now the recipe calls for 2 cups, but remember I'm going to be replacing some of that with the fruit starter. And I normally will do everything off of weights, but this recipe calls for measures, so that's what we're going to use. Alright, I've got 1 3/4 cup of my active sourdough starter, and we're going to put that in the mixing bowl. Alright, I've got my blueberry fruit starter out, so let's get 1/4 cup of that. And I'm going to add that to the sourdough starter. And these starters just by themselves taste so good. Now I'm going to add more sugar to this and more water to refill it. Let it get a little active and then I'll put it back in the refrigerator. Alright, to my starters I'm going to add 1 1/4 cups of filtered water. I'm going to use 1 tablespoon of sea salt and 1 tablespoon of avocado oil. I'm just going to stir this just a little, and I'm going to add about 5 3/4 cups of flour. We may need a little bit more than that. Alright, now I'm going to put this on my KitchenAid mixer, and I'm just going to let it mix for about 30 seconds just to combine. I don't really want to mix it heavily or let it knead at this point. This is just so that it gets all moistened. Alright, it's pretty well moistened. There's tiny bits of dry, but it should help. It should start to moisten just from sitting. I'm going to let it rest for 10 minutes. Well, I've let this sit for 10 minutes, so that gave the flour time enough to get all of that water and starter absorbed. So now what I'm going to do is turn this on and let it just run for 4 minutes. Now, it may kind of sound like it's struggling, but you need to let it go 4 minutes. Well, I let this knead in the mixer for 4 minutes. Now, I added an extra half cup about of flour because without weighing your ingredients, it's kind of guesswork. This recipe was not by weight, so I did it according to the measurements. But we also are having extremely humid weather for us, which will affect how your flour acts. So I went ahead and added about half a cup just so it wasn't as sticky as it was. Alright, I'm going to form this into just a rough ball, and I'm going to put it into a greased bowl. And this is the longest part of the recipe, is just letting it rise. We're going to let this rise for about 4 to 6 hours. So, just a rough ball. I'm not going to get too worried about it. Now I'm going to let it lightly get the grease on top. And since I'm trying to use less plastic, that includes plastic wrap. So I have this bees wrap, and I'm going to use that to cover this. And again, we're going to let this sit 4 to 6 hours. And then I'll bring you back and we'll get this ready to make bagels. Alright, it has been about 4.5 to 5 hours. And this has risen nicely. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this out on a lightly floured tea towel. Now what I want to do is divide this into 12 approximately equal pieces. They're not going to be perfect. And I'm using my bench cutter, scraper, but you could use a pizza cutter, or you could use whatever. Alright, so now what we're going to do is roll these into ball. Make a ball out of it. And then we're going to pinch and poke a hole in the center, and we're just going to kind of work it around until you have about a 50-cent piece size hole in the middle. And then I'm going to put this on parchment paper until I get them all done. And if some are too big, that's okay. Just pinch some off. And put it on a smaller one. I'm going to get these all formed and then I will bring you back. Alright, I've got a dozen bagels and they're all shaped. Now what I'm going to do is cover them with a lightly damp tea towel. And then I'm going to let these rise for 1 hour. So I'll bring you back in an hour and let's look at them then. Well, it's been a little over an hour. I had to wait for this big pot of water to come to a boil. But this is where the magic happens for bagels. When I worked for a bakery about 13 years ago, they made the best bagels. And the secret is you have to boil them. So I have a big pot of boiling water and I'm going to add a tablespoon of baking soda to it. And you notice I don't even need to stir it. It takes care of itself. So now I'm going to drop these bagels gently into that water. You don't want to crowd them, so I'm probably going to just fit about 4 in here. And we're going to let them cook for about 30 seconds on one side. And then flip them. And I'm just using a chopstick. You can use whatever you want. So 30 seconds on each side. And then I'm going to take them out and put them on a lightly greased baking tray. So let me get the rest of these bagels boiled up and I'll bring you back after I'm finished. I've got all 12 bagels boiled, and now what I'm going to do is I've got 1 egg that I've beaten together with 1 tablespoon of water to make an egg wash. So what I'm going to do is really coat the top of each bagel with this. And as I said, this reminds me so much of the bakery that I worked in. And we had a huge vat, I don't know what else to call it, that was used for boiling the bagels. And then there would be just baking sheet after baking sheet full of these ready to go in a huge rotating oven. But they tasted so good, and there's so many things you can put on top of it. Today I'm going to use cinnamon sugar and I'm going to use some onion and garlic, but you can do all kinds of seeds. Sesame seeds, poppy seeds, whatever you like. You can add fruit to them. We made strawberry, we made blueberry, we made so many different flavors. We made ones with cinnamon sugar mixed into the dough. So it's really whatever you like will be perfect. So I have some dehydrated onion here. I'm going to put that not super heavy, but I want a good coating. You want to get this in every bite. Now what I'm going to do is I have some dehydrated minced garlic, and I'm going to put not as much, just a little bit on top of each. Alright, this pan will be going in the oven. And here's the other pan. So one is going to be sweet and one is going to be savory. Now this one is going to be cinnamon sugar, and I have this grinder, but it doesn't need to be anything fancy. You can use like I said, whatever you want, and you can mix your own cinnamon sugar, but I have this, so I want to use it up. And it's got a very nice texture to the cinnamon. And I think I'm gonna do poppy seeds on a couple because I have them, so why not? Alright, now these are gonna go in the oven for about 15 to 18 minutes until they're done. So I'll bring you back when they're all finished. Alright, it's been about 20 minutes and I baked these at 450 degrees. So now I'm going to take them out and let them cool. But they look beautiful. And I'm really excited about this. And I would say I very lightly oiled these. I think next time I'd put a slightly heavier coating, but not much. They mostly are coming off. That one doesn't want to. It's probably the sugar. There we go. And they are beautiful. I would definitely say a little more oil on the pans, and if you have ones with sugar on them like these, they did stick a little and it was the sugar. So I'll bring you back later and show you, we'll give it a taste. So I've got one of my cinnamon and sugar bagels, The bottom is nice and golden brown, and the top is lightly golden. And we're going to take a taste. I've got some cream cheese, because of course you need that. And just a little hint, what we did at the bakery is we sold little packets of cream cheese that were whipped. And all you do is you soften it, you put a little bit of water and whatever flavors you want, and you have the whipped flavored cream cheese for a lot less than what you would pay for it. So let's take a taste. That is good. It's not as chewy as the traditional bagels that we made at the bakery, but it's got a great taste and it's a little bit chewy. So if you want a chewy one, we're going to have to tweak this recipe. But for using my sourdough starter and my fruit starter, I think it came out great, and I'm happy with this experiment. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this, please give me a thumbs up, like, subscribe, and share. And also, I've noticed a lot of people are telling me that they're not getting notifications on my videos. So I'm going to be posting these on my Vickie's Country Home Facebook page anytime I post a video. So if you're not getting notifications, check in on Facebook if you go there, and you'll see my videos. And we will talk again soon.